Hey guys, welcome back. This is Matt Chat, episode 553, featuring Burden of Command with Luke Hughes. Now this game is a unique tactical RPG that blends military strategy with emotionally driven leadership decisions. It's set in World War II, and it puts you in the boots of a U.S. Army captain tasked with leading and empathizing with your men through the chaos of combat. It's a really deep and meaningful experience, as I'm sure you'll agree. So without further ado, here is Luke Hughes.
All right. Well, I think I was probably better for you before I unmuted, but you gotta give me muted. Oh, nice background, man. Wow. Okay. Deluxe interview.
What kind of chair you sitting in there, Luke? That looks kind of fancy.
Oh, there's a story there. Are we live yet or not? Because I have secrets.
We're live.
We're live. Oh my God.
We're not broadcasting, I just
right. No, I unfortunately have no fascinating secrets generally. So this chair was my great grandfather, my great grandfather, and he was a he was a doctor, first surgeon in Raleigh, North Carolina. This was in his waiting room, and his father was a medic 49er who went to San Francisco. I live in that area. Started a business out here. I'd probably be filthy rich if he hadn't then unfortunately drowned in the bay in a squall with one of his sons. So this is kind of a family connection.
Yeah, kind of a bittersweet thing, I guess.
Exactly.
How you doing?
Now you gotta give me one family story here. Where's your family come from?
I was going to tell you, Luke. This has been kind of a nostalgia. I don't know if that's the right word, but kind of a sentimental journey for me with the Burden of Command, and I've been watching the Band of Brothers show kind of on.
Are you watching it now?
I'd seen like a couple episodes from it before, but I, for whatever reason, hadn't just sat down and watched the whole thing. So I'm like about halfway through that. But anyway, as I was watching all this, both my grandparents or my grandpas, like granddads, they were both veterans.
Oh, really?
So it got me interested. I wanted to learn more about, what they did in the service and stuff like that. My grandpa from my dad's side was in Korea. He actually has a purple. He's passed. He's deceased now, but he had a Purple Heart from that, and apparently saw a lot of action, I guess. So I know more about him. He was in the Army. I guess I remember about the only story I remember him telling me about that was he was just like in that show. He was too young and skinny to get in, but he was able to lie or forge or something. They had some trick that he figured out so that he could still get in. But then the other grandpa,
Korean War week by week on Time Ghost right now on YouTube, which I'm following, which is interesting.
Oh, yeah, maybe we should check that out. I don't know. He wasn't one to talk a lot about.
Often the case. Yeah, the more they saw, sometimes the less they wanted to talk.
And my other grandpa, though, was in World War II. He's the one I'm really trying to find out more about him. I found a website that was like, if you have family if you're the family descendants, I guess, of a veteran, they'll send you some information. So I'm looking into that.
If you prompt me with an email, I have a guy who found my father's records. He was in the Navy in World War II, so he's reputable, and he knows how to go into the federal archives and get your grandfather's records.
That'd be pretty cool. I mean, the only thing I remember him telling me one time that he built bridges.
Oh, really?
I'm like, what is that? So does that mean he was like an engineer or something?
Probably. Probably.
Just no clue.
You don't know where though?
No, don't know. I found one thing that said he was a PFC. And I had to even had to look that up. I guess it's like a private first class.
I have a short story for you. This weekend, I went into town. We just went to a random breakfast place, and this guy walks in, and he has a World War II cap on.
Yeah.
And so my wife pushed me to go over and talk to him. And the guy has to be at this point like 98, very together. And it turns out he was in Patton's group, probably his fourth armored, and he was a recon scout. And he went to the Maginot Line, and he scouted a little too aggressively and became a German prisoner of war.
Oh,
Um, and he was at the D-Day ceremony that Biden did, and he was in a ceremony with the president. He was just sitting there at breakfast,
wow. This
and it
encounter
was
with
so real, you know. I mean, my father was World War II, but I haven't talked to him now in almost 20 years. So 20 years now. So he's
wow,
dead.
that's
I mean, you know. So
yeah.
they're going. There are very few left now.
Yeah, even in the I noticed the was it some of the same guys in your game that were doing those sort of documentary is that the right word? Those
Interview clips, yes.
they're like kind of giving their story,
Hmm.
oral history, I think is the term.
Yeah, that is the right term.
So yeah, I was watching that and I'm thinking, these that was probably I don't know when that Band of Brothers show came out.
2003, two, I think.
So that's another like 20 something years.
I can't believe it's that long.
I mean, wow.
We
Yeah,
have one of the
somebody's
actors in the
doing
game.
this.
What?
I mean, thank God that they got those guys on film and doing their history.
Well, we thought about, when we started, by then it was already too late to find them. The sort of shocking thing, because I'm old enough to remember Vietnam War on the TV,
Mm.
is Vietnam War vets are getting pretty old now. And we hope to get to Vietnam War, but I think we still have time to interview them. But that time's starting to go too. And Korean War is getting, I don't know what the math would be on them, but obviously pretty bad now.
Well, my grandpa, I think he was about 80, somewhere between 86 and 88. So that's been a few years ago. So yeah, they must be in their 90s by now.
Yeah, probably. Well, they'd
At
be
least,
what?
at least late 80s, at least
About
eight.
8 to 10 years older. So they'd probably be 88 to 90, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it'd be the ideal time. But people are probably wondering what in the world are we talking about?
They probably are.
The war stuff. Let me show the
Matt has been corrupted and he's not going to be role playing. He's only going to be doing Rat Patrol. Some people get that reference. No longer harnessing rats. Now, before we get sober here, probably everybody's heard it, but I only know you're obsessed with rats. I don't know why you're obsessed with rats. What's the angle there? Come on.
rats. Come on,
Inside track, man. Tell me.
this little guy. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you a were
No,
rat?
no, about
in your
rats
first
and
D&D?
role
What?
playing. Come on, Luke. What the hell, man?
Well, fighting them, but are you like a were rat in one of your characters?
It's. I noticed when I wrote a book called Dungeons and Dust Stops.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Played like hundreds and hundreds of. Yeah, here's the original copy there. Beautiful.
Thank you. Okay.
But anyway, I was writing that, so I'm playing all of these games that I played as a kid, and some I had never played before. But I noticed that all the best ones have something in common, and that's that the first thing, maybe not the first thing, but real quick, you're in a battle with a rat, and a lot of people find that annoying, like it's making fun of well, we're these big brawny, adventurers. We got swords and axes and wizards back there with a fire. Why are we fighting this mouse? But upon reflection on that, I realized this is kind of the essential elements, like the spirit of a role playing game.
Hmm.
You don't start off as a god.
Ah.
You start off as a weakling
Mhm.
this could be the end of your story right here with this rat.
Well, we probably should introduce the game, and shall I introduce myself a little bit because I can say something to what you said based on that.
Yeah.
So first, we're here. Matt's been kind enough to have us talk about a very odd role-playing game where you play an infantry commander in World War II. And we try to be quite authentic about historically, tactically, emotionally. Think of it as a band of brothers. So I've been talking about that. But my background, I think, will be relevant to this audience beyond that strangeness in that I played first edition D&D. I went to, and you can see the background. That's from Burden of Command. It looks a little wargamey with those hexes, so it's really a leadership RPG. But my first games that sort of opened my mind to something beyond Risk, which I loved, was Avalon Hill's board war games. There's one called Gettysburg. Now I'm a Southern boy. My father's Virginia. My mother's North Carolina, or was. So of course interested in Civil War. But I played that. I went to a convention called Origins, which used to be a wargaming convention, and somehow I'm like 16, stumbled across this bizarre game, of course, which was Dungeons and Dragons, and it blew my mind. And so then I became a DM. So actually, and in fact, I was a DM all through high school when it was really, really uncool to do D&D, but we had still had 10 or 12 people who wanted to play. And I've actually started again the last about 5 years with my family. But I would say, and then I'll let Matt redirect the conversation as he wants, that I've saved this line, Matt, so I'm just desperate to get this out. I am a born again role RPGer inspired by a drunk. This is my competition with your cool rat story. So what the hell do I mean by that? So I sort of follow the course of D&D in the sense that it came, as probably some of your audience knows, from Chainmail, which was a miniatures war game, medieval war game. And so it was a very, I remember those first battles with rats, etc. It was a very wargame experience. In some ways, it still is very tactical, very, run your numbers, figure out the roles you need, the maneuvers you make. And so I played it like a wargamer, meaning I tried to min-max it. So I was always trying, and the players they're always trying to optimize their characters. And you think rats are bad? First version D&D, you would know this, but your audience probably doesn't. Magic users had one first level spell they had to live with until they could level up level 2, in which they got 2. I mean, it sucked being a magic user short term in D&D 1. Oh my God. Anyway, so I'm going along. That's how I know it means to play D&D, which is play like a war game, min-max it, which I think many other people were doing. And the games themselves didn't really teach you until like Greyhawk to make it thematic and story. So my dungeons were collections of random monsters I thought would be interesting with random traps. And I wasn't unusual in that. And then I started to get the idea theme. So anyway, about 20, 30 years later, I'd go with my sons, who are probably teenagers, and we go to Kubla Khan convention. We played D&D. I hadn't played in a long time. And we're doing a session, and we're outside the door, right? And what do you do when you're outside the door? I'm a veteran. I know what you do when you're outside the door. You listen at the door, then you buff up in every way possible, and then you go knowing exactly what you'll face through listening. If possible, you crush the opposition. Well, I'm thinking we're about ready to do this. And man, this guy in the party just slams the door open and charges in. Freaked me out. And he was role-playing a drunk fighter. And all hell broke loose. We didn't even know it was in there. But I have to say, it was the most memorable experience I'd ever had in D&D. And so it opened my eyes, right? And then I started paying attention to things about, how to role play D&D, what that means. And so I'm born again. To me, role playing is role playing, not trying to win. You might do things that are bad for your character. And so when I and the team built Burden of Command, our goal is to have you role playing being a company commander in World War II with all the ethical, moral, tactical, logistical decisions that entails. And we strongly try to encourage people, don't save scum, don't min-max, role play, and you'll have a better experience. So that's my journey to Burden of Command.
Yeah, you certainly nailed that. You brought up a lot of stuff there. Let's see if we can show a few of these things.
Yeah, what the hell's this guy talking about?
That you mentioned. So this, I think you started with this one.
Oh, yes. Oh, very good. God, I still have that. It's over in the corner.
Well, you still, wow, really?
Yeah. Oh, well, what the hell? I haven't pulled that out, and well, we won't talk about how long. Let's see. I have never been asked to show this, so there it is.
Wow, you really do have is it all
And
intact in there and everything?
yeah, well, let's see what I have an older. My father, who was a professional historian, um, and a true Virginia gentleman, in the best sense of that word, was kind enough to play with me. He's historian of technology. Here, you can see the extremely high-end components from 1970s. The rolls. I can't believe I'm opening this. This is too strange.
Got some good memories of
Here's
that.
a counter. Hold on. Let's see if I can hold a counter. There we go.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah.
So, yeah, but it was very exciting at the time. There'd never been things like this before. And of course, in your head, you were role playing. Oh, what if I was Lee? What if I was Meade? Could I play as well as them? Can I win the battle where they couldn't? I mean, wargamers are role players. They just don't recognize. It's not explicit, right, in the mechanics. I think it's in their head. Could I be better than Rommel? But it's not in the game typically.
That's one of the things that I was thinking about playing Burden of Command is the history of those war games. And before it was just for fun, I believe they were actually used for training
Ah, yeah,
purposes with actually like this is
correct.
how the officers learned the tactics and things was playing these. And I think H.G. Wells, wasn't he one of the ones that came up with them?
Excellent. Well, I think you know more than you're letting on, but I'll say a few things about those. H.G. Wells, wonderful books. He played miniature war games, but Matt's alluding to a tradition called Kriegspiel.
Yeah,
I
Kriegspiel.
think started 18th century, and the Prussian, when there was no Germany, Prussia trained their officers with essentially war games with referees. By the way, the military still do this today out in the field as well as with board and simulations. But short story is one reason that I don't know if I'll get his name right, Moltke or whatever, the head of the German general staff, the Prussian general staff that beat Austria and beat France and made Germany, said they were winning. They won was because of war games, and he felt that if I think I have the story right, that he felt one of the crippling things for them from those wars when other nations learned to start training their officers with war games, which
Mm.
are role playing, right? You're out there. What would you do in this situation, officer? And make a decision, right? Simulate the situations you'll be in. I mean, what could be more role play than that? Except it matters.
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of lost sometimes on people that this was the actual. I mean, it wasn't just. I guess it was probably fun, but the goal was like trying to
Probably
learn
very stressful.
tactics. Yeah, it's going to be too expensive to actually have all these men and tanks or whatever. If you could simulate it to work out your tactics, and especially with a class. I mean, imagine they're probably training, at least a couple dozen officers at a time with these games, right? Right.
Well, the military will do full scale field. I'm no expert. We have plenty of vets on the project. Will do be large scale field exercises where you're role playing. I think they can. In fact, yeah, the first episode of Band of Brothers gets it across there in England, right? And they're essentially doing a war game because they're not shooting live bullets, and you get to see how wonderful their captain is at the time. But also, there are things called decision games where basically you'll take two or three people out and you go around the battlefield of Gettysburg, and the expert will just talk to you about, well, what would you do here? Well, this is what their situation. What would you decide? And then try to teach lessons from it.
I got to mention at some point. Think you said you're from Virginia.
I am from Virginia. I'm from Lexington in the Shenandoah Valley.
You can't guess where I bet you can't guess where I'm from.
I've been wondering about your accent, but I'm sure I'll regret it. Tell me.
Louisiana.
Oh, excellent, excellent.
Sure,
Yeah.
grew up
Now they had
against
the
the
best
Louisiana
uniforms in the
characters. There's some
Civil War.
Louisiana characters in the show in the game, so that's pretty fun.
Well, I hope you gave your captain in Burden of Command a Louisiana name.
I just called it Matt.
Well, that's brave of you. How's Matt doing, by the way?
Oh, Matt is kicking ass, man. I was laughing. Here's that chainmail gang you're talking about. Yeah, you can see how sophisticated that is. That's probably more advanced than I would imagine they started with. But yeah, when I first started, I'll load up the game here in a minute. We could
Yeah, we better show them something or they won't know how we're talking about.
take a look. But out of all the battles and stuff, the only person I've really wanted to kill playing this game was that guy with the clipboard.
So in the boot camp, which is there's a jerk of a little spoiler, but not much, a jerk of a referee who's always like sort of setting you up to make mistakes, and then even if you do well, sort of diminishes it. But that was conscious. The writers were deliberately, and a little bit in the Band of Brothers, trying to set up an enemy so that you could make other NPCs, connect to. I should mention, by the way, a trick we had pretty sophisticated advisors. I'm not saying we learned everything we should have, but we did. Chris Avalon advised us. I know you interviewed him on
Oh,
the
Chris
team.
Avalon, yeah,
Yeah,
MC.
early on, and he taught us a trick, which I think would be interesting to any RPG designers here or an audience. So what he said was, what we'd do is we'd watch a live play, and we, of course, listen to their comments. And if they were, this is very apropos, right? He'd say, if they're sitting there and saying, man, I'm so tired, maybe it was Baldur's Gate 1 or something. I'm so tired of that little gnome making his stupid remarks. Chris would write down a little comment. Oh, very annoyed by gnome making stupid remarks. And then what they do is go back to the game. And then about the time they think that that should be emerging from playtesting, they'd have one of the other NPCs. Gnome, you are so annoying with your little remarks. What happens? The real player says, "Oh, I like you," to to the NPC who's dinging the gnome. So the takeaway for us was, right, like you, if we know that's going to be annoying, that might be a bonding moment, right? So as you may remember, Sergeant Bennett tends to be sympathetic to your problems with Clipboard Man, but that's not chance. That's a lesson we learned from Chris Avalon.
That was great. Yeah, he's kind of like the love to hate him, you know, kind of guy. Let
Exactly.
me.
And what a wonderful photograph. I'm sorry, the poor person in it,
Yeah,
the real guy.
here's the Steam page for this. Well, yeah, still got the wow, very positive reviews.
Yeah, we have turned 71 very positive. I
Oh, I
think the
see.
main complaint is that they have to do a tutorial. Why do we do that? Because we put you through some mechanics that are authentic, but not the way you're taught. Do you want me to say a line on that or not?
We can. Yeah, that'd be good because I was thinking even before we started this interview, I felt like I knew you pretty well just from playing
Uh-oh.
the tutorial.
Oh yeah. I
Because you're
do
like
break the
all
fourth
over
wall.
that. I've never seen that in the game. Like Luke is here. He's like describing and not
Can't
just like
escape,
not
Matt.
just
I'm gonna
what
be
to do,
haunting you.
like why you did it this way. I mean, it's all there in the game.
Okay, so what he's referring to in the tutorials, I do something a little unusual, which is I break the fourth wall. So the first thing you do is you're about to play a game and immerse yourself in role playing. So perhaps stupidly, right? Luke appears as a voice saying, "Hey, welcome." And the essence of what I say is, "Look, we do some things differently. It's going to be a learning curve, and that may mean some frustration, um, because who wants to learn things differently, right?" Why did I do that? Um, I don't know. Maybe I'd seen a theater thing recently, Broken Fourth Wall. Shakespeare used to do that. But the real reason was, okay, again, we're jumping all around. So, burden of command, you are a leader, you have action points, which we call orders, like XCOM. You use those action points to order squads around. And it's organized in platoons and company. We're trying to be credible about the organization, but you never have enough, right? So you'd always like to do more things. You'd like to rally men, you'd like to bolster your men, you'd like to order them to fire, but we give you fewer than you need. So you're trying as a leader to orchestrate the command and control of your men while they start to break down. The morale goes to hell as they get shot, things go badly, chaos is breaking out. Your job is to orchestrate that chaos. But I know I'm talking to role players. So you're doing it at the same time as we could, if we want to show the 2-minute trailer. That'd probably give the most concrete. Do you want to do that, or you want me to just keep verbally describing it?
Go ahead. I'm just showing a few things. I'm trying to get
All
some
right.
of the gameplay
All
on
right.
it.
So at the same time, I'll use one from our original trailer. So there you are. You're about to order with your action points, your brilliant assault, and everything's going well, but an event fires. And now maybe you're the lieutenant, your captain's down. What are you going to do? You have a decision. So a choice like in there, like that pops up. And it says, hey, your captain's down. Do you want to detail some men to take him off the battlefield? But, of course, that could weaken your assault. And now maybe more people die because you're being a bleeding heart for your captain. But my God, it's your captain. You should save the poor bastard. So what is your decision? That is a burden of command. You have the mission, just take the hill. You have the men, which is the captain in this case. What will you do? So we have tons of these, typically based on history. And I'll put your players through one in a moment, burden of command decisions. But sometimes it's after the battle, and maybe somebody's PTSD or having other stress issues, or maybe there's a logistical issue, or maybe there are issues like that. You run in a French village into a female collaborator who the crowd is very angry at. Are you going to involve yourself in it? Because it's not a military task. On the other hand, you're kind of the only law and order around right now since you just took over from the Nazis. But of course, they're French and they know a lot more what's going on than you do. You're going to get yourself involved in it. Now, that is not a military decision in the classic sense, but leaders have to deal with that. We had vets who'd served in Iraq. They said, often you're dealing with issues around civilians, which is not what you're trained for particularly. So we try to introduce you in a very broad sense to the burden of command, right? Which is much more complicated than here. Let's strategize and flank and take the hill. Now I'll give one example to your audience here. This is historical, and it's written by one of our writers, but I used this early on. I was trying to pitch the game to people. It's called, and we're going to put Matt on the spot here. He's going to make a decision, but I hope that you and audience will think, what would you do, especially if you had limited time? Remember, this is historical. Lethal insubordination. Friendly artillery pummels the enemy. Suddenly your sergeant shouts the order to advance without so much as a glance your way, and definitely without your command. You bark the counter order. The men stumble to a halt. Your sergeant turns, bleary-eyed from drink or shock, and repeats his own command to the men. The barrel of his rifle shifts with a dreamlike slowness your way. Okay, Matt, here are your choices. Audience, here are your choices. Shoot him before he gets my men killed. Sergeant, now is not the time for an advance. Sergeant, I am in command here. Knock the weapon from his grasp. All right, Matt, what are you going to do? In real life, you have milliseconds. I'll give you maybe a few more seconds.
This is the third option.
Sergeant, I'm in command here. Right. Congratulations. You're a normal human being. Nobody ever picks the one that actually happened, which was shoot him before he gets my men killed. This is Lieutenant Spears, who's a zealous one in Band of Brothers. He did this. He was exonerated because it was considered at the time it was the right call, because more would have died he hadn't. Now, that's not a pleasant decision. So Baldur's Gate, Disco Elysium, this War of Mine, these role-playing experiences put you in difficult ethical and moral situations. Burden of command, we don't try to pull punches because we're trying to be respectful of people like his grandfathers. And my father was in combat vet, but he's still seeing things, and the vets on our team. So we try to put you in role playing where you make decisions that matter. And I can tell you, the writers are bastards, and they put me in things that I've never forgotten. And if you role play and you don't save scum, I can think of situations where I lost Wilson in a situation. I don't want to spoil it, and I've never forgotten it. But it was a narrative one, not a tactical one per se. But I don't know if I would have done anything different in hindsight. But I still feel bad. And as you know, one of the most interesting things about games compared to, say, movies or books is they can create guilt and remorse. Now, if you're watching Band of Brothers, you don't feel any remorse. You didn't make any of those decisions, but a game can. And this is not my insight. I learned from other designers. So I got a little off course, but I want to introduce the game. The original question you had for me was, why that break the wall? Hey, there's going to be a learning curve. I did that because play testing had become very clear to us. So I'll talk about this authenticity issue around the tactics, and then I'll try to shut up. So almost every game known to man, including D&D, mostly, says shoot, 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 or swing, 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 till they die, right? It's hard to think of a game that isn't true. Even hardcore, some of your audience might know Squad Leader was an early board game about tactical combat. Still mostly line up fire until the other enemies break, and then if you hit them again, they rout, which is basically kill them. We don't do that because in real warfare, Matt, you're on stage again. Here we go. So Matt, you're standing there. You're an infantry guy in World War II, and I'm the Germans. And you're next to a stone wall, and I open up and I try to shoot, and I'm shooting at you. What do, Matt?
I'm gonna get behind the stone wall.
Exactly. Any sane person would. Now, I turns out it's really hard for me to put a bullet in you if you're cowering behind the stone wall. Now, artillery and mortars can be a little different, but basically, I can't kill you that way. But XCOM, D&D, almost every game out there says if you just shoot enough, they'll die. Now, in Burden, that's true too, but boy, it take a lot of shots. And the frustration. So what we taught was credible tactics. We have another expert, Dermot Rooney, wrote a book, Brains and Bullets, Psychology of Combat, now called War Games. Highly recommend it. And he said, what they do, you suppress them, then you flank them ideally, and you assault, and they're going to normally think, I don't want to die here, and I'm about to die, and so I'm going to surrender, or they run away. So I don't want to go on all the mechanics. My point was, it wasn't bang, 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 you're dead. Thank you. Excellent. Leo Murray, you owe me a commission now. So that, however, was brutal to teach players. I cannot tell you how much they would sit there and they would keep shooting, and we'd try to written text. Here's what you should do. You should flank and watch for them to, go red in their color, and don't keep firing. They'd keep firing. Then we put graphics in. Still, we got, like, every time we started doing intervention and tutorials, we got a percentage of people who started to get it because people learn differently. Some people learn visually. Some people learn textually. Then we started doing it in the gameplay, right? Like an event would pop up. Oh, I've noticed you're firing a lot. Sergeant Grant suggesting maybe you should assault. We even started doing barks, like, sir, they're cowering over there. We broke the fourth wall a little bit, like, they're turning red, sir, maybe you should assault. But this is not because people are stupid. It's because we are all animals, and we deeply ingrained on habits, and every game, including me, has been trained that. So that's why I broke the fourth wall, because playtesting had been really clear. We weren't going to compromise on credible tactics for sales. We probably should have, but we couldn't do what we wanted to do here and not do it the right way. But it's hard to unlearn what everything else has taught you. So I've broken the fourth wall to warn people. Some people love it. Some people hate it. Mostly we've gotten positive feedback, but the one place we do get friction is people don't, the people are unhappy that we made them go through a boot camp. But I can tell you, if we didn't do that, then they'd be hating the game rather than the boot camp, because it would make no sense to them. They'd be frustrated out the wazoo. And we just have tons of evidence from the playtesting. I'm sure there's some exceptions out there, but we had to do the norm. So that's why I break the fourth wall.
I mean, I'm fine with that. I actually like that, because I wasn't joking around on X, and I'm like, this would be a good training, a training exercise for somebody. I know exactly what you mean, because I went through the same thing with if you played a lot of these games, then you have almost muscle memory of like how
that's the right term.
And you need somebody. I kind of felt like you were like the DM.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah,
like interesting.
Like I know you played a lot. It's like somebody playing going into 5e from AD&D or something, or like backwards. And like I know you're used to the dice working this way, but now I need to tell you about the new system.
Very good, very good. Let me here. I played D&D when my son was younger. He gave me the Patient DM Award. He said, well, this was really a manipulation to try to get me to be more patient as dad, because dad, doesn't do things right usually. But yeah, so that's a DM. God, you're right, because a DM is a fourth wall person. There's a lot of truth to that. Yeah. Now I stop it at the end of the boot camp because we want the immersion, but I am breaking in occasionally to talk to you so that I can help you along.
Makes a lot of sense too in a boot camp setting, as well, because I can imagine. I guess I've never been to boot camp in real life, but I would imagine there's a lot of unlearning. There's a lot of assumptions that people have going into that they have to be unlearned.
Well, my wife is a vet, and one of my sons is a vet. My father was a vet, and we have a lot of vets involved. And we had a guy YouTuber out there, Control Paris, and he's an officer, and he feels it was credible on the boot camp. Now, boot camp's much more severe, but they're there to break down your habits and reform you in many ways, or used to be, as I understand it. So, yeah, I hadn't thought about that way either, man. Actually, I mean, we are trying to reform your habits, aren't we? So, in that sense, it's a very classic boot camp. But after that, you land in Torch. You follow an historic regiment called the Cotton Balers, who fought in the most wars of World War II. Their historian, John McManus, has closely advised us. He read all the early interactive fiction you play, though it's been many times revised, and told us where we are right or wrong. There he is. Very good.
I read this book once. I read that.
You read that? Oh, fantastic. Yeah, you mentioned some of these. I was slightly shocked that Matt turns out to be a closet war geek. So,
I just like to read. It's interesting.
well, I've been a big reader, though. There's so many temptations now. I probably watch more videos than I should than reading. I think we can all probably relate to that. But yeah, he wrote. Actually, I'll tell you one more story. This is again the spirit of the game. He wrote one of the books I thought was best for us on leadership. It's called "The Dead and Those About to Die," and it's about the D-Day Omaha Beach, which is a brutal day for the U.S. Army on Omaha Beach. Now, I know RPGers, why is he telling us a history story? Well, listen, it's a Baldur's Gate-like situation. I played through full 8 Baldur's Gate 3, so I do keep up a little bit. Not ready to talk about the terrible things that happen to be there. But yes, the dead and those about to die. So that is a quote from a officer there. He may have been a colonel. Everybody's pinned down on the beach. Matt will appreciate this now. A beach is open terrain. It's a terrible place to be because there's no wall to hang behind, right? So the Germans were up on cliffs shooting at them with machine guns over. It's a very bad situation. They were pinned down. They were suppressed and burned to command terms. They couldn't advance. And then he did a classic leadership thing. He stood up and walked calmly around the beach and said, there are 2 types of people on this beach, the dead and those about to die. Now get off your ass and get off the beach. And his personal example, leading by example, got them off the beach. Now that's human. That's not fire the 40-millimeter cannon or 33-degree angle left or shoot that super weapon, your first-person shooter. That's human, right? That's this bastard putting his life on the line for me. I can respond. And then we respond, right? And so they got off the beach. But what's fascinating is this guy was such a good leader that he had actually planned this speech in advance. He figured it might go south. He knew what he was going to say. And so he said at the time, and he rallied the men. One more example is in our first trailer, which is about 2 minutes long and very concrete, is there's a sniper. You're in an Italian town. Remember, this is all like the DM thing. I'm talking like a DM, aren't I, right? I'm giving you DM-like situations, except it doesn't happen to be half-orcs and elven, mages. It happens to be colonels and lieutenants and PFCs and privates. So there's a scene in there which is drawn from history, shockingly. So it says something like, there's a sniper. He's killing your men. You have a choice. The fiction puts up in front of you, role player. Do you want to step out to draw his fire so your men can see where he is or not? Now, that seems fairly stupid, right? Because guess what might happen when you step out in front of the sniper? It should be showing up here. Well, unbelievably, a colonel in the Cotton Baler Hines did exactly that. Can you imagine? I mean, really, we can sit here and talk about it, but step out when there's a sniper shooting. He stepped out so his men could, take him out. And that guy has an interesting background, which John knows better than me, but he's actually of German descent, maybe more highly motivated by that because of what's going on in Germany. But he was a great commander. Now, in the game, you make that decision. You can be the hero guy, right? But there's a decent chance you'll die. And if you die, you die. In Burden, it's permadeath. So it's not Medal of Honor, run around the beach, feels very real, but the moment you die, respawn 20 seconds later, you die. Now, you can save scum, but we really encourage you not to. And I'll give you one more quote here, which I used to work over. Matt may have been worked over this. If Matt saves scum, which I know he's too good at. He would never do that. So I use this quote on people like Matt. This is a commander of the 3rd Infantry Division. Then Lucian Truscott. he's their general, turned his back on the living, instead faced the dead. It was, wrote eyewitness Bill Maudlin, the most moving gesture. He's at a cemetery and he's turning away from the living, facing the dead. Think about that. It's 1944, near the end of the war. I ever saw. He spoke to the thousands who lay beneath the ranks of Latin crosses and stars of David. He apologized to the dead men for their presence here. He said, everybody tells leaders it is not their fault that men get killed in war, but that every leader knows in his heart that this is not altogether true. He said he hoped anybody here, remember, he's talking to the dead, through any mistake of his would forgive him. But he realized I was asking a hell of a lot under his circumstances. It gives me goosebumps just reading again still. He promised that if in the future he ran into anybody, especially old men, who thought death in battle was glorious, he would straighten them out. What? This war of mine. You're sitting there and your friends are starving and there's some old people and you have a choice. You're going to take maybe these old people have more food in your judgment they need. Should you take some of it to help your people? People face these decisions. They're hard, right? And it helps you to figure out who you are. So are you going to be the person who stands up and is hero in front of the snipers? But maybe you're dead. Then all your men are screwed because they're demoralized because Captain Matt just fell down on the ground dead. How do you think the battle's going to go now? Because he tried to decide he'd play superhero.
Who's the person that said that quote again?
This is Lucian Truscott. He was a superb general by most accounts. He commanded the 3rd Infantry Corps for a while, which cotton balers are part of. And this is from a fine trilogy by Rick Atkinson. That particular one's A Day of Battle. He did a trilogy. He was a journalist, so they're extremely compelling, and they tend to be these kind of.
I heard the name Malden in there somewhere.
Oh, Maudlin. He's pretty famous as
He's a cartoonist. He's a cartoonist.
Was he a cartoonist? Yeah, I know he was one of those kind of things. I'm trying to remember the other.
Is this the guy you're talking?
Let's see. Editorial cartoonist. It's interesting that he wrote that up, isn't it? 2 Pulitzer Prizes. Huh.
Yeah, he did some pretty famous comics.
Oh, yes. Maybe you can open one of his comics bigger. I think people may still recognize his style. There we go. Like, these are classic.
Yeah, Stars and Stripes.
Yeah. These used to be really famous. Probably younger people are not recognizing as much, but there's one like the guy is putting a gun with his face turned away to his Jeep because he has to put the Jeep out of its misery. That's a famous one. But he really conveyed the experience of the dog-faced soldier. I think that was the term they used or something like that.
Oh, yeah, this is the one I was thinking of. The damn tree leaks.
I don't know that one. The damn tree leaks. Well, we do a lot of that too. So we model a lot of morale on the battlefield. So John McManus taught us this. What determines morale? Why are the orcs or goblins going to run in this battle, right? The obvious ones are people are dying, or other goblins or the goblin leader has died. But they're more subtle things, right? Like if you've been deprived of sleep for many nights, or you haven't had warm food for a while, you may just be depleted. I know I get irritable of one night of lack of sleep. So how would I be after a week of that and facing mortal situations? I might just crack. There's a long thing we go on to about how people gradually crack under war, and we try to model that too in Burden. But it's hard. But my point was things like wet trees. It's funny, but those really matter to the morale of the men. So we'll put you in a situation sometimes like, hey, Captain, look over there. It looks like they set up a kitchen tent. You're supposed to be at this destination now to, as an order, but your men are hurting. Do you want to take 30 minutes out and get them some grub? On the other hand, taking 30 minutes out may mean some people die up ahead because you didn't decide. On the other hand, if you go ahead and you didn't get that food, maybe more people will die because your men aren't up to it. And it's so boring, right? Sleep and food, but that's reality.
Yeah, I was just a while ago, I was playing a mission and there was a situation where I was attacking some Italian infantry, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And it popped up and said, they look like they want to surrender. They got a flag, but some of those guys, I think it's this, I don't remember who's talking to.
Flags.
They're like, they got flags, but there's some of them are still holding their rifles.
Yep.
So the choices are like, well, I guess I could send somebody else to go, or like one of the options was stand tall and accept, the surrender. And I don't remember what the other option was. Maybe just shoot him. But I really sweated over that choice because
Good. That's the point.
I felt like the right thing to do. What I wanted to do, and I ended up doing, it was tough. It was to just stand tall, and not make one of the men do it, because by
Good
that
for you.
point, I'm like, I don't want to
Now
just
we're not going to say what
sacrifice.
happened because you don't
No,
know,
no,
but
it's
that's
like,
that
man,
was a
the whole
good.
thing could be over, right? At this.
That's an historic situation, by the way. One of the things you get to do in the spirit of thought cabinets from Disco Elysium, I'm still pissed at them because we had kind of a thought cabinet ideas ourselves called Mindsets. One of our writers did, but they got theirs out first. Jerks. I think they did okay. Um, we have mindsets. So are you zealous like Lieutenant Spears? That may mean something to some people from Band of Brothers. Are you cautious? Are you cunning? These not only define how your narrative choices will go, but they give you tactical options. Like zealous, like Spears, might make you do assaults much better, but side effects, you may get more people killed because they'll follow you more because you're so motivating. Maybe you shouldn't have been forcing an assault. Or, you know, difficult situations create situations where you define who you are as a person. So, Matt, what mindset have you focused on?
I was going to tell you about that. I went with the
Ah,
doctrine. I'm not, I just like I don't know exactly why I picked that one. I read them all and I just felt like this just I kind of want to go that way. I like the way it was worded because none of them sound like they're bad. I mean, there's like
no, none of them are bad.
like
They
this
all have
the
pros and
logic of
cons.
it, the philosophy of it's like, the rules exist, the book exists for a reason or something like that. I'm like, what, probably that makes a lot of sense to me. Like, yeah, I would want to learn from the voice of experience,
Well,
not
go
be
ahead.
the green. I don't want to be the green recruit that thinks he knows everything.
Well, it's funny how that works, right? Because when we're at a distance, we're watching the films and so forth, we can be bleeding hearts and be kind. But we saw a lot with players that when they were put in the situations themselves, suddenly they start to get a little more hard ass, right? Because because the burden's there, right? They make the wrong call here, the nice call, and their men may die. So one I've never forgotten, Alan, I blame you, lead writer here. So it's a farmhouse and it's in Italy too, I think, or Sicily. And well, you've got some Germans in the farmhouse, not a big deal. You can call in some artillery. Then assault Americans wisely, didn't want to lose people. Do a lot of artillery, very effective. However, narrative helps you realize that there are civilians in the farmhouse with the Germans, perhaps not by chance. Of course, these kind of situations happen all the time in Afghanistan and Iraq. Um, what are you going to do? Now, the liberal minded, I don't mean that in the left right sense. I just mean, the sort of open to humanity senses. You should be respectful of the civilians, right? Which means, well, so what are you going to do, officer? Are you going to now not call artillery in? Well, I bet your men will be really grateful for your being so bleeding heart when you charge across the field, and they've served you for 2 or 3 years, and they'd like to go back and have a life, maybe marry their sweetheart, or go to college, or fulfill their own personal ambitions at 19, and you got them killed because you want to save some strangers. Now that isn't wrong, but it's not right either. And so maybe you should call in artillery. And I would say those kind of things. This will remind me quote that a lot. Got me early on. I remember you're a civilian. For those who don't know it, I really recommend it. It's very narrative focused, not tactical. You play civilians in a Sarajevo-like situation, Bosnian wars, and you're just trying to survive in a war zone. And so this little girl came to the door in the fiction, and I'm running my little group of survivors. She says, "Hey, we need medicine for our mom." I'm a nice guy, right? I'm a good father. I'm kind. So
Mhm.
I got some medicine. I gave her, she's very grateful. Turned around feeling really good about myself. And then as Chris Avalon way, the writers for this war of mine had one of the NPCs. What the hell are you doing? Janet or Bill, I can't remember who it was. Is lying, dying in the back room, and we need that med. Where is your loyalty to some random person just because she has a daughter, or to us we depend on you. And again, now I don't know if that was right of me to have done or not. It certainly was intended to be right, but I stopped in my player tracks, thought, who am I? And the game designer for that said I think he called it, what he called it, ludid, it's a very fancy term, ludic dissonance. If you can pull the player out of playing a game and they think about who are they as a person, that was always his goal, right? Stop and who are you, Luke? What really should you look at those art fantastic, right? So and Disco Elysium does some things like that, right? But War is full of that. I can't resist one more. You can see I'm still passionate after these years. So Carl Melentes, I love telling this story. Carl Melentes, famous novelist, Vietnam War novelist. He was an insanely interesting person in the sense that the guy was a Rhodes Scholar during the Vietnam War, and he resigned and went to be Lieutenant Vietnam. How many people did that? Cushy, with a real legitimacy. Oh, these people gave me all this money. He could rationalize staying, but he didn't. Then he wrote a book, which I had all the writers read early on, called What It Is Like to Go to War. And he said, war is spiritual. Now that sounds like it's a very strange way to put it, right? Because war is ugly. War is death. I said, but what could be more spiritual than death? He said, but I didn't say it was a good place. It could be hell, right? War can be hell, but hell's a spiritual place. And sometimes, though, it's a beautiful place, right? Band of brothers. When you risk your life for someone else, that is a form of love, not romantic love, but brotherly love in the World War II context. So we paid a lot of attention to that. And he said, beautiful phrase, I think, when you go to war, you enter the temple of Mars. And so we actually, the Morocco, Matt, is our attempt consciously. The writers titled it for themselves, this is the entering the temple of Mars, because you will encounter death and you will make decisions about death and you will assume the burden of command. And that was due to Carl Melentes, so helping us to understand the nature of war.
Wow, this is deep stuff we're talking about.
Well, the war is, I'm afraid.
Yeah, do you mind if I load the game up real quick?
I would like it if you did, because I still feel like we're being very abstract here.
Let me show. You want me to start a fresh one or show you where I'm at?
Go with whatever you want, man. I'm to where you are, actually. That'll be a little more, otherwise you'll be stuck in the tutorial. Or you could load one of the demos. I would suggest you either, if you think where you are is interesting, load that, or go to the scenarios and load. If you want a really narrative oriented one, load Sacred Ground. If you want a little more time, let's do Sacred Ground for this audience. I think that'll interest them more. Or where you are, if it happens to be narrative. But Sacred Ground will be narrative.
See if I can get this to load.
I'll say a few things. Just stop me when you're ready.
11 hours already. Wow.
So the RPG designers out there, because I watch your show, and there's such famous people you've had on. It's a privilege. Thing I was thinking about, so maybe of limited interest to them, was how do you drive the stakes, so to speak, of leadership all through the design? How do you do these kind of emotional situations that define a burden of command? How do you make the command with the orders on the battlefield reflect tactical decision making where you can't do everything? Again, interrupt me, Matt. I'm just trying to fill the air till you're ready.
Hang on. We might need to do
what?
This. Right, here we go. Here we go. I think I got it.
How do you manage the men's morale? Incredibly important to the game's success. Your men's morale shot, they won't fight effectively. They won't win firefights. They may run away, etc. Are you ready?
This unable to sync. If you play now, you may not have previous game progress.
Steam Cloud's helping you there. Isn't that cool?
I don't want to lose my save game.
Well, I could load it up. You want me to do that? Except I don't know if I can share an LC. I probably can't.
You know what I can do?
I could point you to a YouTube stream where I play it.
I want to get this. Let me just pause I can pause the recording for a minute.
Well, that's a good idea.
Recording again. Okay. All right, and we're back.
Hello again.
Okay, so you want me to load a scenario?
Go to scenarios. Unless you have an exciting point, this will get the point across. Okay. Click scenarios. Pick demo Sacred Ground. Go ahead, start it. Balanced.
Yeah, tactician must be really tough. Balance.
When you get to the Germans, you're playing tactician. You'll know. And I will warn you,
I
Matt,
don't
when you
think
get
this
to the
is not an
Germans,
easy game on
it's
balance.
not. It's not. But your learning curve will keep improving.
Yeah, that's another thing I like about this. Like I said, I feel like Patton at this point. You get this. I got
Oh,
major victory. Take
well, if he's fighting Italians and Vichy, he's starting to get hubris. So wait till he reaches the Germans.
they were saying that they're like, yeah, don't get too cocky because these
The
French,
Germans are different
the
than
French
they
are
were.
the French don't even really want to fight anyway.
Exactly. Italians didn't want to at that stage of the
I
world.
didn't even know this. I thought I knew something about World War II history. I had no idea about all that Vichy stuff and the
We
like
fought the French.
all the French people fighting the Allies. I had
Isn't that crazy?
I never even heard about that.
Well, we're trying to give people a connection to the real history like Banner Brothers did. So here's
Yeah,
one of the interviews. Let's see what it does.
paused. Ralph Willard.
Two fellows exploded, speak German.
It's a little quiet.
A young man from Chicago whose parents had been killed in German concentration camp. He was gotten out of Europe, out of Germany, by an uncle who lived in Chicago, who was able to manage some way of getting him back, getting him to Chicago at the age of 14. He was a very bright fellow, seriously. And he had an intense feeling.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
So that's going to be relevant. All right, now, Matt, I don't know what you'd like to do. I could just get you into things, or you could read a little bit, or what would you like to do?
We can see what we got here. I haven't done this scenario before, so this is brand new to me.
Well, why don't you play for like 3 or 4 minutes, and I'll give players, you can always edit it out if it's not that exciting. Read it and go for it, man.
All right,
Let's
let's
see how much of a role player Matt is.
1945, somewhere in France. The boom of artillery recedes in the south as the men of the 3rd platoon take a moment to rest amongst the rubble-strewn square. Most sprawl in the dregs of the day. Several eye the ruins of a nearby church. Corporal Davis, the bandage about his arm dark with blood, whispers a little prayer of thanks. Wish we still had a chaplain. A prayer from the living for living. Thankfully, it's the thought that counts. I guess it'd be nice to have a chaplain. Your company has lost a lot of men, not all of them carrying rifles. Yeah, like the chaplain. 3rd platoon's commander steps over to Corporal Davis and speaks quietly with him. 3rd platoon's commander steps over to Corporal Davis and speaks quietly with him. Their uniforms show a scatter of mud and blood, but Lieutenant Dearborn, also of Virginia, if I recall,
Correct.
has lost none of his bearing, or, judging from Davis's little nod, his determination. Davis returns to his squad. Dearborn stares out at the ruined church.
Something's going on.
Recognize the architecture? Any bearing.
Buried treasure.
Come on. I'm tempted to click that because I would never say
Go
so.
for it. We're having a little fun here.
My men will not dig, not for that. Lieutenant Dearborn replies, you may count upon it. He extracts a little slip of paper from a pocket. The names there are written in an elegant cursive script. Okay. He will need that for his report. I dread to see those names.
Do you get what this is?
It must be a list of the wounded or
Correct.
casualties. It isn't the longest list you've seen, but it still hurts to read. Today, 2 dead and 4 seriously wounded. Others lightly so. Dearborn. Maybe I should let you read for Dearborn since he's got a.
Well, I would appreciate that, Alan. Today, 2 dead and 4 seriously wounded. Others lightly so. Dearborn reports his aristocratic Virginia drawl shows only the barest hint of fatigue. We can still fight, but a hot meal and night of good rest would do my men some good. Now, when you get a list like this in the real game, right, we've worked very hard to create empathy,
Hmm.
so that it matters when you read those names, especially if it's one of your officers. Here, it's a little abstract for the audience, but how did we do that as designers? The writers, of course, have worked very hard to make these characters distinctive. We generally, almost, I could say, without exception, the writing's gotten positive feedback. Um, the art, you can see the quality art. This is from a famous game artist, Marius Kuzak, who's an oil painter as well. He did a lot of the Total War art. We can't afford him, but he really liked the project, so he supported us. We use the music from Chris Scribner, tries to have themes for the men and the mission to pull at your heartstrings. We make the decision empathetic, on and on and on. So we try to make these things not abstract. And I hope you're noticing, audience, this is not a war game. I mean, it's about war, but you're not moving units on the battlefield. You will do some of that, but you're right now, you're instantly into things that are about people and their lives, like your characters in Baldur's Gate 3 might be talking to each other.
We have to lead. What would the leader do? You, I guess.
I thought to do the same until I saw this, Dearborn says, and gestures towards a faded inscription etched into the stone, one just barely visible in fading light. That is a Latin dedication, Roman Latin specifically. He's always a bit of a look how much I know guy. Judging by the location of markings, I suggest this stone was once part of the Limes Germanicus. Oh no, we're probably going to get a history lesson.
Sure. Oh, this church that old? The Romans built this?
Not the church itself, Dearborn remarks. Builders of the early and high medieval ages were known to scavenge stone from Roman ruins to rebuild their own towns after the cataclysms to end of the Western Empire. He tilts his head in equal parts sorrow and thoughtful. Their old world ended, and so they built a new one. Stop. A new one. Stop. I don't get that. We have inherited the fruits of such determination from our past, and now we have gone and destroyed them. No need to remind. Okay, go ahead. You look at the choices here, though. This is interesting.
Oh, I haven't seen that before.
Yep,
Gain a Jewish perspective. So this is not preordained. I mean, I could pick what I.
that's right. It's going to depend on what you decide.
It's like the role play.
That's right.
Okay, so I could be. No need to remind me. I'm Jewish. They'll rebuild. What we really have, haven't we? Sure have.
All right. Now, what I'm going to suggest for the patience of your audience is hit one a lot. We'll just run through the rest of fiction, and I'll make a sort of point about the scenario and show them the battlefield because we haven't really made any sense of that, and try and say how those are tied together. Okay, and click 111 basically. And you're making some decisions that will impact the battle. We try very hard that the fiction choices influence the tactical play, etc. But let's speed along. Now, you can see it's a simple situation. So what's interesting here? This is a tactical battlefield. You've only got a simple squad and a leader here, Dearborn. Click on that. You can see there's this little organization. More units will join the next turn. In fact, we'll probably spacebar in a moment and let people see that. But to you, audience, this looks like a tactical war game. It is in some ways a tactical war game, just like D&D was in some ways chainmail early on, arguably, right? But you see the top left with the German sign over the graveyard? That is an emotional landscape because that's a Jewish cemetery. And we did some work and research on that. And we had a Dutch rabbi go over some of our content. He's the chief rabbi for the Dutch army. So we're not talking out of our, you know what, when some of these things, but it's an issue for Jews to dig up the dead, I think, like many cultures, but it's a particular religious issue. I don't claim to be an expert here, but it matters to them. And so either you, as the person with a Jewish background, or things are going to happen as he plays, probably. So we'll just let him play while I talk. Okay. Well, the German bastards have put a heavy machine gun. Very good, Matt. In the graveyard. That's not playing fair. Germans didn't want to play fair because graveyards have a lot of nice defense. All those stones, in this case, Jewish stones. So now as you play, I'd have to think about the exact sequence. What happens is now an emotional landscape's opening up. So either you as a Jewish character or one of the ones who is Jewish on your team is going to bring up his qualms about calling an artillery on this graveyard because he's destroying Jewish, ancestors. Now, I think we can also make arguments that's the right thing to do because people who are alive will die. But you must, as a leader, then handle his quandary about what to do. Now, is that a tactical decision? It's not a tactical decision, but actually connects to a tactical decision. Should you call on the artillery or not? So let's see. Maybe we'll get that scene. Just keep going for a moment. But now you're making decisions. Let's see. There we are. You want to read that section?
Let's see. Will their bones be crushed? Christ almighty. Captain, did I hear that right? Stern sounds even more upset than you feel. If we hit the cemetery, we're desecrating the dead. That's a sin. That cemetery might be the last remnant of a community already hard hit by this war.
Yeah.
If you call down fire on it, then the rounds are doing the Nazis' work. Ooh.
So what are you going to say here?
Oh, we can't. Oh,
What do you want to do? Here we go, Matt. Let's find out who you are with your
this is the
audience.
perfect one here because you're like,
There you
okay,
go.
well, they're dead.
Yeah.
We want to put living people in danger to protect
It's not a nice decision here, is it?
a cemetery.
So what are you going to do?
I'm gonna have to go with the unsupported, I think.
Okay.
Wait. Let me make sure I got this straight.
That means no artillery will come in.
This one, they fire the mortars on the cemetery and
right,
kill.
which means the cemetery will be deeply damaged, but your men will have a much better chance of surviving this. On the other hand, you go the other way, you're doing a nice thing by the cemetery, but your men are going to die with more frequency.
I would rationalize it by the folks on that cemetery would probably be fine with
Okay.
those Nazis.
Then.
Oh, I got an achievement for that. Military necessity. Use the mortars. Okay. Captain, you can't. I can't. You've never heard him this unsure of himself before. Third platoon needs fire support. Never mind. Hold fire. Oh, this is like I have to.
They're pushing. So you're going to keep to your decision or not?
Yeah, we have to go through it. We'll snap and whiz all around. Stern finally replies. His voice is low and solemn. Tell Ash she owes me for this. The Browns out.
That's interesting. When I played this, when I did my version of it, it was a different outcome. I actually got to persuade him on an ethical basis that, look, people adopt your Jewish, what you argued, that the Jewish ancestors might want modern people like Stern, who's turned out Jewish, to survive. It's interesting. Somehow I bet it was our early decisions, early in the fiction we raced through, changed how I was going to react. So here we are, right? A tactical situation with mortars, very indifferent to morality, yet somehow it's involved in religious and spiritual issues. So, but that's real war, right? The real war was involved in all kinds of unpleasant issues, like those French collaborator women you'll run into. And I hope, by the way, Matt, you were speaking at the beginning of the episode about your grandfathers. I hope that this helps people of all ages connect to their ancestors, right? I look at, after the writers worked me over into fiction, I look at old photos of people in the forest and the snow, and I feel connect across, I'm being a little grand here, but across time with them, right? I mean, I have some tiny sense now what it meant for them to be in that terrible forest, and not knowing the enemy's out there, cold, miserable, wet, maybe not enough, certainly not enough sleep, not eating well, and trying to survive. So we're trying to connect you to that. Now, I don't want to make it all grim, everything sucks. Sometimes it's things you remember, like how good people can be to each other. Now, what Matt's doing here is he's exercising command. The Germans, though, are making him pay for it. He's moving up. He's rallying as many as goes up. You can see the squads. He's got some machine guns and mortars of his own. And this will be, it will be fireballs, right? Artillery. It will be, think of your corresponding spells for mortars or machine guns, right? And you will do magic that makes people fight better, like bless. What is bless? Bless is a bolster in Burden of Command. I'm not saying we're D&D. I'm saying that role-playing tradition connects.
I don't know if my tactics are all.
Yeah, I think it's a little hard to play. And I discovered when I did some streaming, it's quite hard to play well when you're talking and narrating, but then people don't mind your screwing up.
Well, let's see. I can't move those mortars, I guess.
So in any given round, you can see that Stern up at the top right is leading. You can't run everybody at once. Only Stern's men can beat now. But while you do all Stern's cool stuff, maybe the Germans are going to do things that are going to make you unhappy. Maybe you should have activated Dearborn's platoon and worked over the machine gun first. So we're trying to put you on hard tactical decisions. If you play Baldur's Gate 3, which is in my head a lot since I finished it recently, right? Which spell do you use now? Should you hit him with fireball or should you pump things up a little bit early? So there's plenty of tactical play about where do I position people? How do I use my spells and so forth? Now I'm constantly focused on D&D. We all know there's Cthulhu and all kinds of role-playing games, like This War of Mine or Disco Elysium, but I'm trying to just pick one that's pretty common to many people.
Oh, I shouldn't have done that. Yeah, this game is so absorbing with the strategy.
You were losing Matt here.
The runner darts over. Private Comstock can't shave yet, but he's already proven himself as an able replacement for scouts. Captain, we heard a tank on up the rise. Not one of ours. Oh, great.
I thought you'd be happy to hear that. This is bad news, Matt. Come on, man. This is a chance to be a hero.
I could hear the tracks squeal. It's got tracks.
The tank tracks.
Panzer. Oh, great.
Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least we can shoot this guy now.
But maybe you should be thinking about withdrawal. One more interesting thing for people. So over time, we've realized that the burden of command was essentially that tension between men and mission, right? Responsibility of their lives, but your moral responsibility to succeed, right? So other people don't die in a war, and so the war is won. But most players are taught win, 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 win. Take the hill. You're out of the campaign if you don't take every objective, or rescue the hero or heroine, whatever it is you're supposed to do in this, tactical fantasy or war situation. But real war, leaders would withdraw. You never say retreat. I was taught by the vets. You always say withdraw. So we had to work as game designers to think, how can we help players not try to win the mission? And since it's very hard, because again, that muscle memory, as you said, Matt,
Yeah,
must win. So what we decided to do, in a moment of inspiration, I would say, was to articulate you can see in the bottom right, a men victory condition. On the right, there's mission and men. So what you can sit here and say, Matt might say, there's tanks coming. I could finish this, but I may get men slaughtered. I'm in draw on mission and major victory on men. I could withdraw now and get a major victory with the men, which will build loyalty with, oh, there's a tank. Oh my God, on the right, over right. I haven't actually seen the tank arrive in this scenario. Now, this is a very bad situation. This is not some cool, cute game where you can do super things with a tank. It's at a distance, and you don't happen to have an anti-tank gun or a tank. You're screwed here, if I could be frank. So, unless something wonderful happens, maybe Matt should withdraw and win the men victory condition, even though he'll only get a draw on the mission. So as the war goes on for Matt, he's going to face more and more of those because the Germans have tough situations, and real commanders don't know. Is this situation when they can win? You don't know. If this battle is one you can win, maybe super tanks are coming to the rescue, tons of Shermans, but maybe they're not. Oh, wow. Look, you're a mess over there, Matt. See the reds and the yellows? That's the morale state of his men. You want green, but he's bringing some people up. Matt's going to fight on. Matt's a brave guy. Maybe soon a dead guy.
Yeah. Well, at least I can get that finally.
You really want to get that mortar shot in. Yes. Justify his moral decision. So now that should, with some luck, gradually suppress the Germans and they'll become less effective.
Let's see. Can I? Yeah, these guys are kind of beat up, aren't they?
You're bolstering them. That makes them fight temporarily better, but you really like to rally them. But if you rally them, it'll take a turn for them to return to action.
I think if I run out of here, I'll get shot again when I.
Well, you can hit the withdraw. I'm trying to help Matt here. You can hit the withdraw before the tank clobbers you, Matt. But I think Matt still wants to play Medal of Honor.
Yeah.
You could succeed, but you've got the tank crossfiring you. Now,
Yeah.
the orange hexes mean that if Matt moves into those hexes, he'll take enemy fire. So he should probably bolster his men, and then that'll move them faster, and your leadership will help them.
Wait,
They take fire.
Lieutenant Dearborn's in command. Oh, I see.
He's spent. You've used him up now.
Yeah, this is gonna get bloody.
It's going to get bloody, probably. Though you've got some blocking line of sight. Those buildings are preventing the tank from seeing you everywhere. Maybe you could maneuver. I don't know.
Guy.
All right, Hank and Steve, you feel pretty good. I think we've got Matt locked into the scenario now.
I want to just move him. All right. So that's my. What is this? The machine guns?
That's your machine guns, yes.
Okay, that's probably not going to be good against a tank.
And you don't have many places to take them right now.
There's my mortar, but it's already been used. Now, can I press that?
Press is the ability to give the unit extra orders sort of one time, so they'll do more. Yeah, you could press it.
Out of range.
Why is it saying that? Stern, that's odd. Try it again. Right click to see what happens. I don't understand why it's doing that. Maybe that one, it's, I don't know why it's saying that. It could be a bug. Not that there are any bugs in the game. I can explain that right now.
That's okay.
You have a bazooka team. A bazooka is an anti-tank weapon. There's a hitch, though. Bazookas have about 1 or 2 hex range, and that tank's fairly far away. But maybe you could get a bazooka over through the woods to it, or maybe they'll cut you down when you get in range, right? So who knows?
Oh
boy.
Harrowing.
Okay, you just got somebody killed, Matt, while you're being cool here. That was the skull was death. Somebody died. So look at the morale of that unit. Those are people out there, right? They care that somebody just died rather than it's one more number on an abstract sprite. So their morale has gone to hell. Oh my God, he's charging. He's going to take fire from the tank. Now there's a small. Oh, you just took 4 casualties.
That tank can shoot as many times as it wants.
No, it's about 2 or 3. It's got about 3 shots. The worst thing you can do in the game and in real war.
Knowing how not to play.
Tactically, yeah. Well, I did that a lot when I was streaming. It's amazing how much worse you get when you're streaming. Is to run in the open against an unsuppressed enemy. That's the way in the real war you died, as opposed to you crept through woods carefully, used terrain, etc. Is that your bazooka team?
Yeah. Probably should have went around the house.
You could go to the house and give you some cover, but they'll see you. Well, they might not. You don't know if they'll see you. There's fog of war in the game. You don't know if the enemy's going to see you or not, depending on the cover. You could creep in there without taking a turn. Creep helps you move without being seen. Now that group is totally ineffective now unless they rally. There's nothing left to be done with them except rally. And you can't rally them because you moved them this turn, so you have to wait till next turn. Oh no, I guess you did the capacity. So, but they're used up for this turn, unless he's clever and presses, but he can't because he's out of orders. So I hope what you're hearing from me saying all these unintelligible remarks is
Lieutenant Dearborn's
an action. Oh my God, you just got Dearborn. Okay, I think you can see here the game is going to be rather unforgiving if you make tricky decisions. It's not like, oh, congratulations on a cool power move. You wiped everybody out in the map.
Hey, can I use it on the tank?
You could. It might do a little suppression. Yeah, did a little. But you're not going to destroy it normally.
Interesting. I haven't done a lot of missions with tanks.
Actually, to be fair, I don't think in the combat model we did any suppression for the tank. So unless you get lucky with the shot, it's not worth your time. You can put smoke in front of them, things like that. Normally, it's what you see on the left for people. It's infantry combat. Line up your machine guns, your mortars, dealing with infantry targets like that machine gun. But players who are watching, look at all the colors around there, right? The colors are like a guide to how it's going for Matt. And you see a lot of red and yellows. That means it's going pretty badly for Matt.
Thanks, Luke.
I mean, Matt's playing brilliantly since he's the host, and I've rarely seen such a display of
I'm gonna
tactical
let you play.
brilliance.
Oh yeah, we're not gonna win this.
Yeah, it's getting ugly here.
Well, let's see. I can't. If I move there, I'll get shot again. I don't think he's got. We got a couple guys here, but they're. I think about all we can do is just wait.
You could withdraw.
All right.
Yeah. Oh, you're not. Oh my God, do we not allow you to? Okay, sometimes designers are being bastards here. Sometimes they decide you're not allowed to, so not allowing you to do this. That was mean, Alan, and I mean Hank and Alan. Why do you do that, guys? Or Paul? Sorry, Paul Wang. Our writers come from Choice of Games. Some of your gamers may recognize them as interactive role-playing games of all types: dating, fantasy, werewolves, a few war ones, history ones. It's a good way to have some of this kind of stuff without all the tactical. Somebody just got hit again.
Yeah, I was doing way better in my
Oh, Matt, no, Matt's
save game.
he's getting no time or preparation. He's just trying to get along, and I'm confident Matt would be doing better than he is here. But you know, he's a little distracted.
Oh no.
Oh. Oh my God, you're having a terrible day.
Oh, come on, guys.
All right, the bazooka team, the one hope there, just got whacked by the machine gun. Now you
Yeah.
can see there, right? The machine guns are making other things he's trying to do not work.
So what do I have to do to fire these guys?
Well, you'd need to not be in the morale shape you are. Then you'd advance and get within 1 or 2 of the tank, and you'd take your shot, ideally from behind. But that's a heavy tank. You'd probably fail with their morale right now. And the shot only has about 30-40% chance. Again, this is not everything works out the way you want it to. It's more things work out the way they would have.
It's a snafu.
Yeah, this is a snafu right now, but you think you're alone, historical commanders, and having snafus? You read a lot. Read any account from infantry company commanders. Snafus were common.
Yeah, that's how you know you're a good leader when you can.
Okay,
get
Matt's
really
company
bad
platoon there is completely
hand
trash now.
no. Anybody can succeed when you've got overwhelming force and perfect positioning and perfect morale.
Exactly.
Although
I got cut out of like 3 or 4 turns. Oh, I know why you're getting a full scenario. Because you have the full game now. In the demo version, it ended when the tanks appeared. And so I've never seen it this way. This is where you get to play the full scenario and try to figure out how the hell you're going to handle this situation. So I've never seen this play before.
available chain of command between. So I can't even rally these guys.
Who are you trying to rally?
Anybody.
Well, see, your problem, he's got Stern, who's in charge of the weapons company, trying to rally members of a different platoon. And he can only rally people from his platoon.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess I got kind of spoiled with the captain.
Exactly. Now, I haven't seen any replacement leaders appear for you. That's very odd.
Maybe they don't want to come be part of this.
Oh my God. Now the tank, yeah, you're toast, if I may be blunt.
Flanked. All right, I got it, guys. But see, this is a good example of like they're dug in, right? So they're not taking as much damage as you might think.
Yeah, that's going to help you. I don't think there's much you can do at this point, honestly.
Yeah, I can't move. I can't rally, so
Stern, you could rally your weapons, but you're shot. Yep.
why don't we
All right. So I hope what you all took away there was a mix of tactical and emotional and so forth, and not getting a little schooled. But that it's not particularly fair at a certain point, nor is intended to be, right? I'm a little surprised the writers don't give you, or the designers don't give you a withdraw choice there. I'm going to ask them about that later, because that would have been the best call at that point.
maybe that's just quit, if it's a scenario because you're not
Yeah.
there's no campaign to move on. So this is where I'm at in my main campaign.
You're in 1945? Wow, you're far in.
France mud.
No, you're back in this. I was going to say.
The
I was
hell?
gonna say, I didn't think you were that far along.
Now, how do I get back to my main game?
Go to your saves,
Okay.
and you want Cotton Baler's current 01, Sicily Landing. There you go. That's your current one. That's
This,
more like it. I didn't think you were in 1945 Germany.
yeah, you probably want to be pretty advanced by the time you're trying to do that scenario.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I know what you're saying. In a lot of these times, you want to just like I was doing capturing some objectives, and I thought I got about 2 turns. I might be able to get those other bonus objectives. But on the other hand, if I just withdraw now, I'll get the major victory, and I won't just needlessly endanger the lives. Because if too many people die, you lose that part of the victory.
So you hear Matt talking like a commander, right? He's tactically worrying about the burden of command. When should he withdraw for the sake of the men? As opposed to, I'll just be a gamer and take 3 more victory hexes, so I'm a cool person.
This is not that type of game. I would have been really upset if Dearborn had died in my campaign.
I
'Cause I've been,
lost
like, letting
Wilson.
him. He's been like giving me plans.
You're going to lose somebody. Trust me. Unless you're very unusual.
Yeah, I was wondering about like how many of it is sort of hard coded in.
There are 1 or 2 hard coded in to sort of introduce you to Marlente's Temple of Mars, but otherwise it's statistical and it'll depend on how you play, right? If you keep your leaders back, they'll probably survive, but the men will notice that you're not leading from the front, and so their trust will be lower. So there'll be a consequence for you. But if you lead from the front, they see you put your ass in the line, and this RPG attribute called trust will increase for your leaders because they see you risking yourself, ideally successfully.
You got the lead.
But then they're likely to get killed, right? And so I would say from what I've seen from most players playthrough, they usually lose 2 to 3 of their original characters by the war's end. Now that's very generous compared to history. Junior officer casualty rates were very high, 30% or so in a few months. But we make it lower because we want you to emotionally bond with your men so that you feel the burden of command. And real commanders spend lots of time on a march and the meals, shooting the shit, forgive my French, and so forth, so they're emotionally connected. But in a game, we're not going to have you sit there and endlessly eat meals, right? So we give you more time with your leaders to emotionally bond before something nasty happens.
Maybe I should stop because I don't want to get.
I don't think this will mean much to people right now. You want to make these decisions very carefully here.
Yeah, let me get out of that.
I would not race through this part of the campaign. That's my advice.
Oh, I've worked.
You're at an extremely interesting point in the campaign there. I would play that one carefully, thoughtfully.
Wait till I exit.
At this point, you're stuck in a fiction. I would hard kill it later, off your PC. Because the game's not very kind and quitting the fiction. And you don't want it to save you so that it thinks you finished it.
But before you go, I had some questions.
Sure. You've been very kind.
Oh yeah, here we go. Okay. Let's see. We've already talked about. Well, why go with the decision for burden of command to have 500,000 words of interactive fiction? Most turn-based war games tend to be light on narrative.
Now, I'd like to sit here and say it's genius. We realized after deep moral reflection that only 500,000 words could do justice to this deep situation. Now, the truth is, I looked around to hire writers, and I wanted highly, interactive. And I was looking at people who were interested in military, which is fairly rare among game writers. And I saw Alan Geis and Paul Wang, who are both very well respected on choice of games. And Paul has done some 18th century fantasy, but still grounded in 18th century warfare. Very successful choice of games. Alan had done something like, Alan, I'm going to forget your Pacific War one right now, but you can find them. They also were very highly rated. So why am I telling you this other than plug them, my great team members, is because choice of games it's all venture through text. So these are writers who are used to writing a lot, right? To convey the game. Everything happens. There's no tactical map. It's all writing. So I think inevitably, given the way I hired, and I have no regrets, they've done a fantastic job by everybody's account. We got a lot of writing. Now, actually, since I'm in a design podcast today, yesterday we were doing some after action reports about what we think was right or wrong in the campaign. Now, we didn't do anything wrong in having 500,000 words. You don't read all those, right? Because you have a path through them, just like choice of games. But reason you have a lot of words, one reason is because you have a lot of choice. A lot of things can go differently, right? And characters can die, and you could have done this or you could have done that, and influences the battlefield this way, and so forth. So there are good reasons, but there is a lot of writing, and this game is not for everybody. If you watch our release trailer, we try to be honest about that so people can decide if it's right for them or not. But there's also a lot of writing because we're trying to convey non-tactical things. How does Dearborn feel? Look at the dialogues we had there. So it's also there to convey the world of war beyond fighting, right? Or beyond bullets. So, but that being said, we're having our after actions yesterday, and we were actually consciously pulling up, let's see, we pulled up Baldur's Gate, we pulled up Banner Saga, which had some influence. We pulled up Shadowrun, and we were trying to extract heuristics about how much text do they use, how much conversation, and what could we learn from that for our next iteration. Now, the one you just played, Sacred Ground, consciously had less writing because we knew we were trying to encourage streamers to do it that way, like you did. But the main campaign is much more text heavy. Our next campaign will be tighter. We have a new writer joining us from Choice of Games for our next campaign, and Brown, and he was saying, I forget who he quoted as a writer, but he was saying, in my American parlance, he was saying, be Hemingway-esque, is he's going to push us, right, in the writing. So we were pushing that. Paul and Alan, you can, tell me later terrible things I misspoke here. One more fun story for you, Matt. So when I'm first-time game designer, at least for digital. I've done some board stuff, but I was trying to figure out, and I made the mistake of listening to a podcast on writers by writers, because I was trying to learn how you do this, how you work with writers and so forth. This will shock you, Matt. In their podcast, very good one. I'm blanking on the name right now. The writers sat around and they well, there's a term for it. They complained in vocal ways about how they would be brought into game projects late in the process and have to patch narratively whatever the game level designers had decided. And I, wanted to do a good job. I will not do that. I will bring the writers in early. So I brought the writers in very early, and the game is strong narratively and has story beats, and it's very conscious about the pacing of the scenarios and stories. Strength. On the other hand, I brought in a little bit later guys who Hank and Steve Overton, Hank Stoffers, who had a lot of background as successful designers in war games, Combat Mission, and other hardcore ones. They weren't narrative people particularly. Steve's written a novel actually, but anyway, they came in and they were not happy with me that the writers had already picked some of the scenarios. Like, what do you expect us to do with this scenario, Luke? There's no tactical situation here. So there was a little tension early on, and we had to really figure out how these people from a strong narrative tradition who are not wargamers, really, and these wargamers were really not writers, could work together. And there were tensions, but we worked it out. And now we have people, it's really quite nice in the sense that they will sit there and jointly think about a scenario. Is this narrative more? Is this tactical more? Who's the lead for this one? The writer? Or is it the scenario designer? How can a writer help me here? How can this tactical guy help my writing? Tightly interwoven. But it's been a learning process is the point. Iterations. We still have things to learn. The ways I would do the boot camp differently. What a shock, right? But what we did do, I would say one last thing in favor of the team is I come out of a science-oriented background, psychology, neurophysiology, and I was taught, pay attention to data. So we did tons and tons of survey monkeys with playtesters, which would give us numbers, and then they're writing about it. We'd meet weekly with playtesters and hear their informal conversations and recommendations. That was a schooling. We'd watch how the ratings went. We would watch live playtests and watch them play. So we iterated endlessly to try to get where we are today, where Matt stops and thinks, I don't know what to do in that decision. Like one of our rubrics was, if the decision was obvious and that was a bad decision and we were going to change it, because we didn't want you to have any easy decisions. I mean, there's some, but by and large, the spirit. So it's the same with the next version. I think there will be fewer words, but hopefully still a high degree of interactivity.
Yeah, I don't think I didn't get the sense. Not that I haven't finished the game. You saw where I was, but I've read, I haven't caught myself thinking, wow, I wish there were less to read, because the stuff that I'm reading about is needed. I don't feel like anything is just extra or it's going off tangent or just wordiness,
That's generous because
it all fits. But then again, I like reading books. So
well, see, I was going to bring up, you're slightly suspect in this regard.
yeah.
On the other hand, the writing really, I have yet to read a critical review of the writing. We had William Bernhardt, who is a famous author. He's written legal thrillers, sold 20 million copies. So possibly he knows what he's doing. And he came in and gave us advice and feedback early on to make the writing more gripping. And you're talking about, you feel like it's needed. So these writers are already strong, but of course they could learn from a guy like this. He did, if you play the Morocco one where you're landing on the beach, is it cool and sexy and neat on the landing craft? No, actually there are pools of vomit swimming around in the base, because that's what was the reality, right? People are getting sick in these terrible craft trying to land, and that gunfire overhead. And so he said, be very concrete. The smell of the vomit, the look of it, the feel of the texture of the sand as you land, because that puts people there. So the writing puts you as much as we can in that situation rather than just pose dilemmas. It's trying, because the choice of game writers are good at that, right? To suck you through your imagination into this world of imagination.
That's the key. All right, let's look at that. There was one I wanted to ask you for sure. Here's this is
where it zings me at the
I'm
end.
curious about what you think about this, and I thought this was a pretty good question.
Oh boy.
Should any wars be off limits to computer games?
That no one's asked me that question. Okay.
Yeah, should
It's
any
a good
war
question. I have a first response to that. I don't have any answers here, but we have thought about this a little bit. So a couple answers to that. First, there's a pretty clear human effect, which is the closer the war is to the present, the more touchy it becomes, as it should, I think. But we all have that intuition. I don't think any of us really gets any emotionally worked up when we hear about the Romans, legionnaires being massacred in the Teutoburger forest or whatever it was, in under Augustus, whatever that is, 40 AD, something. But I bet you the people in the forest dying with swords in their belly cared about it at the time, and their families cared about it. But the distance is so great. Like Stalin said, a million casualties is an abstraction. An individual death, if I took you back, just talking to our designer days, doing a really interesting game, by the way, I hope you'll look at. Poetic Studios, Sacred, I want to get it right. And it's about sort of Celtic and Romans. He makes that world real. He's been getting a good reception. Let me get his game right, because I want to do right by him. He's a good little indie. Poetic Studios, Sacred Fire. That's it, Sacred Fire. Check that one out. That's really interesting. But anyway, to get back on the point. So the further distance in time, the less. World War II, I think, to many people today is very abstract. To me, it's a little more concrete because my father was in World War II. There we go. Thank you. So a screenshot or two from it. It's a really interesting game. A little bit in the spirit of kind of things we're talking about, emotional burdens, but it's a heavy narrative one. Yeah, show some of the pictures. I strongly recommend everybody look at this. Definitely owe me on this. Anyway, it's one I'm tracking. And by the way, I am going to get distracted as a designer because I think other RPG designers are paying attention. So what they do is he has a lot of emotional relationship warfare. So you get into a situation, maybe you're dealing with Romans or some of the members in your band, and the choices you make in the tactical game, it's an emotional relationship tactical game. You're changing your relationship by the choices you make. Should I get an antagonistic relationship with this person so I can get a positive one with this one? It's really insightful. There was a mobile game that had you play lawyers in a courtroom, was a little bit like this, but this is, I think, very innovative.
Like next level.
It's very clever. I encourage you to look at it. Anyway, On the other hand, I think we all have the intuition it would be very charged to go in and right now do a burden of command in, say, Afghanistan the last 5 years. This would bring up a lot of strong feelings for people. One thing that stayed in my mind is we did some YouTube, and somebody gave me feedback along the lines of, hey, these burden of command guys, they just seem to love warfare and death, and what is wrong with them? And I, of course, thought I'd have a brilliant, virtuous remark. I said, well, we have many vets involved. And this is true, by the way. And the ones that are involved want us to tell these things. They think it's important. It's respectful to the experience. He came back with, I am a sergeant major. I'm not sure I got it quite right. In Iraq, I saw a lot of death. And the last thing I want in a game is any more, or words to that effect. What could I say to that? I could only say heard. So for him, for many people, it's not right. And the closer you get, I think it's less right. On the other hand, we've had contacts from the military, right? That, well, maybe the young lieutenants should be exposed to these things before they get to discover what the hell they're going to do in those situations. Remember, like we talked Kriegspiel, so moral Kriegspiel. Who am I going to be as a moral leader or managing men's morale when these things come up? Because they will come up. But our thinking is there's no right answer, but sort of our gut now is like the Vietnam War is now reaching enough distance that in some ways, I mean, the vets who served then probably may want it now, right? Because they want to be remembered, right? That what they gave, what their families gave, whereas maybe 30, 40 years ago, they wanted to forget. It's complicated. So it's a great question. And also the nature of the war depends, though. That's another whole topic. What kind of wars are off limits or not? That's very tricky. What about genocidal wars and so forth? It gets very tricky, right? The cotton balers, Americans liberating Europe is morally, it's a nice story, I must say, right? It's people trying to free people. But what if we do want to try to do this eventually. What if you're a lieutenant or a captain in German army? Did you cease to be a human because you're a good 18 or 20-year-old and you were raised in the Prussian tradition to serve? But boy, do you think there's going to be some burden of command decisions there? I think we all know there can be some very ugly burden of command decisions. How far do we go with that? We don't know all the answers to that. It's going to be very tricky. We do want to go there eventually, but what will the boundaries be? I mean, we don't want people doing war crimes as part of a game. We're not going to do that. On the other hand, obviously that would have been there's a German TV series that covered, I wish I could remember the name right now, covered to a lot of controversy, but also support in Germany, sort of people going through the war and, of course, encountering these kind of issues, the obvious issues I think everybody knows I'm alluding to. So how will you approach that? How will you handle it? What if you were in the Soviet army, World War II? That's that's a totalitarian regime then too. So even though it's fighting on the right side, well, it was right side, but I wouldn't label Stalin's regime as like a nice place, right? So very tricky. We got to start with a nice one here. We're doing a non-US campaign next. We are headed towards touching these kind of ones. We do want to do some Korean War. Another one I would say interests me personally, Spanish Civil War. Spanish Civil War was ugly on both sides, like the Russian Civil War. So you may hear, if you know anything, it's 1930s. It's sort of fascist.
George Orwell fought in that one. I think.
Very good. George Orwell, 1984, fought there for the Republican side. Yeah, on the surface, it's a nice story, right? They were fighting for a sort of democratic organization, so forth. But very, very leftist people went over, very communist, actually, because it was very idealistic then about what communism could be as opposed to what it was. Went over and fought. Lincoln Brigade, a lot of Americans paid a price later in their countries for doing it. But it's not some pretty story where it just turns out, oh, well, all the goodness was on the air side, the Republican side, and the air side was supported by Germany, Italy, fascists. Well, both sides massacred a lot, brutally. It's a brutal war, and they were ugly on both sides. And the more I read about it, there's no easy story here about the good guys. I think probably the Republicans a little more good guy, but it's a complicated story. So, yeah. So, but there are a lot of human tales to tell here that matter, right?
I think you certainly have the sensitivity and the tact and I forget the exact wording of this game, burden. When it might be maybe even before the tutorial. for the boot camp, and it says something like this was the intention here is to help you to connect,
Yes.
to the soldiers. I thought that was really powerful.
Well,
That idea. I mean, I never got the sense at all like this is, oh, let's have some fun.
no.
Let's just kind of glorify it, or let's sanitize it or something. I mean, this is like the opposite of that. This is deep, meaningful stuff.
Thank you. I thank you for saying that. I'm glad that came across. I can say it was somewhat self-reinforcing in that when we got the idea out and people were attracted to it, we attracted vets. And then you immediately start to feel responsibility. I'm not a vet. I feel responsible not to sort of betray them and not betray my ancestors, and my father's memory and all that, to be respectful of their experience and try to speak some truth, like Band of Brothers is respectful, right? And bringing the vets on. And also, if I'd gone off track here, they would have left the project, I predict. I mean, I think also, like the scenario designers, they're really hardcore about trying to have credible tactics and representation of the Germans' machine guns and things. That matters a lot to them. Like, both of them are vets, actually. So Steve Overton's a U.S. engineer, like I think you said you think your grandfather was, and Hank is a Dutch vet, and so they care, right? So they're not going to I promise you, they did not let me or the writers have too much fun with getting off the realities. No, we give ourselves some breaks, but we have some rules, like we bend but do not break history. So we're not going to give you Tiger tanks, which were late war tanks, in 1942 Morocco, beating up the Americans when they land, and jet fighters going over. On the other hand, if in Italy or Sicily Tiger tanks were in the neighborhood and they might have been able to join, then maybe certain choices you make will lead to that outcome, and you'll face them when the historical people didn't. Otherwise, you might as well just read the book, right? So you will change things, though, just sort of in your local context. But yeah, on the respect issue, two other little issues. One is, what do we do with real people? Are we gonna, what if we said, oh, well, let's look, there's this really interesting Commander Hines. Did you get to play Hines? That to me is lack of respect. Who are we to put you in his boots, or to judge him? Especially people who made tricky decisions. In John McManus's book, we had to be very careful because that guy was out there fighting, dying. Who are we to say he was a bad decision maker there? So when we get into tricky ones, we try to really stick very closely to exactly what that historical figure did, because that's respect. And nor do we let you step literally into the boots of the people, because that would be wrong by them unless they give us permission. We're not big enough to go get their permission, right? So you have a fictional company and a real regiment. You encounter real situations and some historical figures, but respect is very tricky, and you have to be very careful about it. So burden, right?
The burden of I think we've covered all these other questions I was looking at, because somebody had asked about the veterans. How do veterans respond to the game? Do they respond differently than civilian players? But I feel like we've kind of covered that already. Do you think?
They were very enthusiastic. We got a lot of vets involved. That was very fine.
So I think that's all of our questions. I was gonna ask you if you had seen a show called Sharp.
Oh yes, I read the books. They're wonderful. You want to tell people what that is?
I don't know. I just saw it's got the ones that I haven't read the books. I think it's Bernard Cornwell, maybe, or
yeah. Oh, the great historical fiction.
Yeah, I mean, I've been meaning to read them, but I just love those shows.
They're Napoleonic. It follows a Napoleonic officer from the lower class in the British Army, and he rises in the ranks. And it's
I mean, I think something
great
like that,
historical fiction, but very based in history, but great historical fiction.
that could be a good sort of game for you, right? Because you also kind of focused on leadership, and
I would like to. I don't know if I'll live long enough to do it, but one I would like along those lines is, I would love to do. This is a fantasy, but since you indulge me, I'd love to do, like, there was a famous book back in the 30s called Lee's Lieutenants, about Robert E. Lee and his lieutenants. Like, he had created Stewart, dramatic, Stonewall Jackson. People have heard about it. Grant would have some similar people. It would be very interesting to do a Burden Command at that level. I'd abstract it a lot. It wouldn't be so tactical. It wouldn't be so XCOM-y. It would be probably very simplified, high-level order divisions, heavily event-driven, really try to reach a broad audience. But if you read any Civil War books, oh my God, colorful characters, crazy decisions, strange things happening. It'd be really interesting to cover. And it doesn't have to be, it would be much less on the wargaming side and more on like the leadership at that level, because they were crazy people with leadership of all sorts and all backgrounds. I mean, Stonewall Jackson was a religious fanatic while also being a very effective commander, but not a normal person. Like, scene for you, Chancellorsville, big battle in Civil War. You can tell I'm Virginian now, right? I know these things. So it's an important battle, Seven Pines battle, I think. They come across Stonewall Jackson as really effective commander. He's taking a nap under a tree in the middle of the battle. Very funky character. Hard to explain. I mean, really, what the hell is he doing? It wasn't that he was totally exhausted. It's like he decided to take a nap in the middle of the battle because he's Stonewall Jackson. He's a real strange character.
Stonewall. I remember my high school history class, and
In Louisiana?
yeah, Louisiana, the teacher was
Excellent.
like, that was when the war was lost, when Stonewall.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
If he had
just as well. Right?
survived, if he had survived,
He survived. It would have been interesting.
totally
Yes.
different story.
We had, speaking of history teachers, we got John McMahon's. I got to go on the History Underground, plug them, 700,000 subscribers there. But why am I telling you this? Because he's a history high school teacher. He's
Oh,
got that following that big a following. Can you imagine having him as your history teacher? So I want to thank you before we close, not just the usual way, but honestly, this is very important to me. I try not to say things that are nice that aren't true. I try to be nice, but I try to be truthful. So this is very important to me, this interview, because I really tried hard with the team to make this a leadership RPG. It is not a war game. It's not a narrative, choose your own adventure. It's not a history book. It is a leadership role-playing game. And I can go through all the levels I kind of did on how it's designed all the way through with that in mind, period. Right? Your main characters are almost all leaders, right? Not the unlisted, though we have a little bit of that. So it's hard to reach people on this because they see the hexes and they think war game. And so we've had to struggle. And I've seen we got PC Gamer, one of the early ones, very good review, but it said, it's a war game with people you care about. And I'm really grateful, and it's a smart review. But the framing is what people rely on, what they're used to. But that's not what the game is. It's like, is D&D in the 1970s, was that chainmail in a fantasy setting? It was not chainmail in a fantasy setting. It was something, I'm not saying we're like that. We're obviously nothing at that grandeur. But as an analogy, we're trying to move in a different direction. We just had a new PC Gamer review, and it's called us, the visual World War II visual novel I didn't know, or visual graphic novel I didn't know I needed to, read. And he does call it an RPG, but it's hard to be heard. I approached a lot of RPG streamers. Without exception, they didn't pay attention. So you're giving me this opportunity to say this. Game Design Roundtable has given me an opportunity to say this. It's very important because I'm really keen, you may have gathered, to reach your audience. It really matters to me because we're trying to put you in their boots on their ground. It is a role-playing experience. If I haven't succeeded by now, I should just shut up.
I definitely did.
Thank you.
I think you'll probably get a lot of comments on the video too.
I hope so.
Check the game out. Yeah, it's been fun meeting you, Luke. We'll have to do this.
It's been a pleasure.
Maybe
Come to Matt's Discord. He has a fun crowd there. You might need to bring some rats, though. I had to dress up in World War II rat. Makes me think of that Monty Python skit about everybody dressing up in rat costumes and being chased around with carving knives, but that's getting a little kinky. So, but he has an interesting crew on his Discord server. They asked me good questions right away, and we got in some fun conversations. He knows, obviously, given his book, a lot of D&D history and so forth. So I will say the opposite now as we close. Any folks coming in from the history or gaming side, hey, pay attention to his channel and role playing, because he can give you some interesting experiences that will broaden you in a different way and the people he knows too.
That's awesome. You're a nice guy.
I try. Ask my kids though.
I'll say good night to you.
Good night, Matt. Thank you.
And that's all for this week's episode. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Definitely check out the game. It's really fantastic. And a really unique experience, I think. And this is coming from somebody who's played, well, a few RPGs. As always, I want to thank not just Luke, but thank you, Luke, but everybody else who has maintained this channel, kept it going, kept it in production, kept the fires burning here in the Matt Cave. I couldn't and wouldn't do it without you. So if you want to help support the show, please go to the link in the show notes to the Patreon page. Become a subscriber. You'll get a great Discord. You'll be connected. You're going to love it. Definitely do that. It only takes a couple of minutes. But if you can't, don't sweat it. But I do really appreciate anything you do for the show. If it's commenting on these episodes, liking them, sharing them is really great. Mentioning them to your friends. Whatever it is you do, please keep doing it. And I and Matt Bradley Shergi greatly appreciate it. So, thank you. Okay. What about that news from the Matt Cave? Oh, got so much news. My phone is going crazy. First off, Tired Gaming Dad writes in about Banquet of Fools update. This is a version 2.0, so congratulations to Joe and Hannah if you happen to be watching this. They've got 2 new maps, Rosafir and Leisure Falls. They've got new features, clickable door exits. Wow. Self-repairing breakables. This is interesting. Hearing-based theft detection. They've got companion following updates, I guess pathfinding, adjustable move speed based on the gear, and the option to skip dialogues for dialogue effects. Okay, that's interesting. 20 plus bug fixes, a new summons, the Vol tree, and looks like much more. So you can pick that up on $19.99 on Steam. I believe it's still in early access. It could be, I'm pretty sure of that, but check it out for yourself. I'll put the link in the show notes for you. All right, next up we've got Miko writing in about Kathy Rain 2, the Soothsayer. Do I need to talk about this, or can you just read my mind? Okay. In all seriousness, this is I didn't even know about this series. I guess this is a sequel to a game called Kathy Rain, obviously. This came out in let's see, I'm not sure actually when the first one came out, but this new one is set in 1998. I did note that the first game had some really great reviews of it, so it seems to be humming along. Detective Kathy Rain is broke, desperate, and chasing a high-stakes serial murder case dubbed the Soothsayer. This is a point-and-click thriller. We're getting more of these. That's really cool, especially these that are done in this classic style. Love this artwork. Let's see, upgraded presentation, bigger and bolder. Longest Clifftop Games title yet, with more characters, diverse locations, and returning voice talent. So you can put that on your wish list. If anybody from Clifftop Games is watching this, you seem like it'd be a pretty good team to have on the show. So contact me if you're interested in that. If you do, I'll play Kathy Rain number 1. We'll see how that goes. Okay. Matt Bradley Shergi, yes, the assistant producer, he wants a promotion, folks. You think we should promote Matt? Just go to that link in the show notes to the Patreon page, and maybe you can help make that happen. Okay, Mystery House returns in 3D for PC and VR. VR. Do they have a pirate VR game? Because they could just call it VR. That's the type of quality content you expect from a show like this. Okay. Let's see. First graphic adventure reimagined. Of course, because Mystery House was the one that was that their. I'm pretty sure that is their first game. It's definitely the first that put them on the map, so to speak. Graphical adventure game, 1980. Wow. Faithfully reimagined in 3D for modern audiences by Guillotine Games. Interesting name. I don't know if I'd want to work for a company called Guillotine. It sounds like your head might not stay attached. But anyway, this one's got real-time exploration, voice acting, and dynamic puzzles. Same murder mystery, new depth. Players will still race to solve a tense Agatha Christie-style whodunit in a deadly mansion, but now with richer character backstories, environmental storytelling, and multiple endings. That's some very nice sounding improvements. Immersive gameplay, explore every room, drawer, and trap in the in either first or third person on flat screens or in VR. It's good, keeping it flexible. And enhanced horror atmosphere. Oh, it's got an adaptive soundtrack. You know, the more I read about this thing, the cooler it sounds. You know, I have to check this out. Mystery House Returns. You know, that might be one to keep an eye on. You know, that first, the original's kind of a hoot. I don't know who would really necessarily want to play that today other than for nostalgia, just to see all the, you know, see how far they came so quickly. You know, it's a great historical artifact. But I always thought it was genuinely creepy in the sense that the artwork looks kind of like a serial killer druid. You know, it's like something you'd see scrawled on a prison wall. Not that I know what's scrawled on a prison wall, but I can imagine. Okay, moving on. Now, this little bonus item I thought looked kind of cool. So, you know, I'm a huge fan of the Heroes of Might and Magic series, at least the third one's my favorite, but now they are apparently adapting this for the tabletop. It's the first official tabletop RPG adaptation based on Heroes of Might and Magic 3. Oh, excellent. So they're basing it on the correct one. This high fantasy tabletop RPG developed by Modifius and Poland's LMP Publishing, under license from Ubisoft. Epic scale, tactical depth, players command an army, armies, powerful magic, shape the fate of Antagaric, using the enhanced 2D20 system built for cinematic strategic gameplay. 8 factions, classic and stats, deep lore, magic items, tactical rules, and tools for GMs. This is available now. Actually, it's not available now. It's being pitched, I guess is the way to say that, on Kickstarter. So it is being kick-started. So check that out. You can support it. Make sure this happens if you are interested in a Heroes of Might and Magic tabletop RPG. All right. Let's wrap it up then. So I was looking for quotations about leadership. And I found one by General Norman Schwarzkopf. Does that name sound familiar? Yeah. You know, I had a good friend of mine whose girlfriend was apparently related to him. Well, maybe it was his niece, perhaps. But I never got really a chance to drill her about military strategy. Where's the pity? Anyway, I just thought that was kind of cool. Anyway, the quote is actually much cooler than that story, and it goes something like this. Leadership is a potent combination of strategy and character. But if you must be without one, be without the strategy. Wise words, so ponder on that, and I'll see you guys next time.
Dying for his country. He won it by making the other poor dumb bastard die for his country.